Hi there and welcome back. Yeshiva here. Glad you're able to join us for the third um, masterclass of the Yoga Sutras, Becoming a Plant Medicine Yogi. Well, we'll dive right into it. This time we are going to go into the meat and potatoes of the practice here of the Ashtanga plant medicine yogis. So let me put the slideshow. Just a look back at where we've been, the Patanjali's 8 Limbs of Yoga. Here is a review of where we're at with regards to the tree. We're going to go into the root system of what supports all the other practices. And then after that, we will go into all those other practices and how the different plant medicines fit into our tree and anything else that we might be doing. And then how does that incorporate into our daily lives? So this is where we were, and here's where we're going. Let's just kick it off here with the yamas. This is one of the two of the support systems of that tree. Again, we're talking about that tree of life or tree of self-realization experiences. And the yamas are the first on this path. If we were to have approached it in a linear manner, this is where we would start. But again, if we are falling into it like most of us, then we can start anywhere on this path. But really now we're trying to find that linear kind of path back on the tree. So the yamas is comprised of 5, as are the niyamas, but this is the do's. So this is the set of guidelines to live by. It's a very good place to start. Again, we're using the Sanskrit words, and the first one here is ahimsa. Ahimsa, a very, again, loose translation, is nonviolence. Nonviolence is a very similar, I also want to bring the kind of dotted line back to the Buddhist principles, because they also have a nonviolence principle. I first learned about this when I went to my very first Vipassana silent meditation retreat, which was Buddhist. And one of the tenets that they asked you to hold while you were there, amongst others, of course, the silence vow, but also the absolute nonviolence. And basically, you couldn't kill an ant. Let's say you found, some sort of insect in your room. They asked you to very politely, kind of get it out of your room, but not necessarily kill it, right? So when they meant no violence, they meant no violence at all. So again, from whatever perspective you are coming at this in life of where you are now, just keep an open mind about these tenets. You might think, oh my gosh, killing an ant, how stupid, like how bad is that? Or a mosquito in our neck of the woods in the jungle, right? How many of us, and then we get kind of real aggressive with it. I certainly do. So it's just something to consider, something to ponder. Not that you want to go, super extreme. Maybe you do. But again, I'm just giving you the overall, and then you do with it what you may, however that is applied in your life. Now, more specifically, other than just killing, insects or bugs, nonviolence refers mostly to yourself, okay? And I want to talk about, just maybe pull back just a tad, the yamas specifically are, how do you relate to yourself first and foremost? How do you relate to yourself in all of these practices? Second, how do you relate to others? And what does others mean? Your nuclear group, right? Could be your immediate family. And then the extended circle in your life, coworkers, people you know. And then the second part of how do you relate to yourself might be, how do you conduct yourself? So kind of view it with that lens. And so when we talk about nonviolence, we went forward on these slides. Excuse me for that. And so when we talk about nonviolence, let's talk about nonviolence to yourself. Can nonviolence be a negative thought you are having about yourself? Or can violence be a negative thought you're having towards yourself? Absolutely, right? Because how many times is that our biggest enemy? Is what's in here, in the left side of our brain, that little voice that's constantly, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, they don't like you, you're not talented enough, you're not lovable. All of that is violence against the self, right? So we're talking about all levels of nonviolence. How about when you get in your car and you're like this sweet person everywhere else, but you speed up and not let that other person pass, or you cut somebody off on the road, or they cut you off and there comes the monster out, right? Let me chase them down. Let me get into that argument or that fight. And there's that violence coming up. That word is very kind of charged, right? Violence. It almost seems like extreme, like, oh my gosh, I'm not that. But yes, we are, right? Our anger, whether it's raging outward or raging inward, it's that whole quiet rage. Nevertheless, it's still rage. It's still violence. It's still that strong emotion that's coming out of mostly trying to avoid pain or ridicule or anything that our ego mind is trying to protect us from, right? But in any case, ahimsa is that principle of practicing nonviolence in all aspects. Who is the one really well-known person who talked about this concept in different words? Well, Jesus. Jesus talked about turn the other cheek. And many people are like, huh, turn the other cheek? Because the old way, right, was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You punch me, I punch you. So that was the old way. He came and said, no, turn the other cheek. If they strike you on one, here's the other. That has a whole lot of implication, and this isn't a religious talk, but it stems from a concept of ahimsa from the Yamas, which means nonviolence. Gandhi, right, brings up another person in history. Nonviolence to an extreme level. Now, again, how do you integrate this, and how do we take little pieces, and how do we start to apply them to our lives? Maybe the best and nicest way for us to start is to start becoming aware of our thoughts and becoming aware when we're having a violent thought. And it may not be, oh, I want to kill this person, or I really want to, do this grotesque thing. It might just be that unkind word to yourself, that unkind thought to another person. Maybe that's when you go, that's ahimsa. That's where I should practice nonviolence. Nonviolence to myself, nonviolence to my immediate family, nonviolence to everyone around me, maybe even everything, right? So it can be a little tiny practice. It could be a giant practice. This could be the one thing that you do all year and you really try to work at something. That's what the yogis do. So that's why I started off also saying that some yogis never practice any physical practice because they're just working these. And it kind of just reminded me now of the 12-step program, right? In AA, in the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous program, they have these steps they work. They work through these 12 steps to achieve this level of recovery and sustained recovery at that. And a lot of those steps are, healing those relationships, acknowledging your faults, etc., and then starting anew each and every day, each and every moment. So ahimsa is nonviolence in a very big way. Can be applied in a small way. So let's move on. Satya. Satya is what is true. What is true? That could be very subjective. But really, one of the good ways to know, to engage with someone, to say a statement, to not say a statement, to do something, to not do something, is to use the litmus test around, is it true? Is it good? And is it necessary, right? A lot of the conversations we have might not even be necessary, right? So if we think about it from that perspective, it's hard, right? It's hard sometimes, because then what do we have to talk about if not other people or ourselves in a way? So this is another one to start developing that consciousness of awareness of the self. What are my words about? What are my conversations about? What am I talking about all the time with others? And is it true? Is it good? Is it necessary? Now, of course, you could say, well, how do you know, truth, right? I may think it's true, but somebody else might not. Just use your highest and best judgment. You know, this isn't like hard and fast. That was not true, and you said it. It's really not about that. It's about cultivating a life well lived, a better life, right? So it's about the effort, it's about the will, it's about the intention, the intent with which you're saying the words. And so, you know, in Latino culture, we have a word called chisme that, if you know Spanish, you might know. Chisme is basically gossip. And, you know, I grew up with, you had coffee and you had chisme, you know, you engaged in this banter around, let's talk about everybody, right? Let's talk about the news of the family, the news of, so, oh, did you hear about so and so? I know all the cultures have that gossiping component. I, to be very honest, didn't even know it was a bad thing until I went to the United States and I learned a couple of really, you know, I'm gonna confess here, a couple of things that I didn't even know were wrong. Like for instance, cheating. I didn't know I mean, obviously I knew overall cheating, but like, oh, looking at somebody's paper and like, you know, something like this. I didn't think it was that big of a deal until I got to the US, and there's these like almost like higher ethical standards around certain things. I'm not talking about everything, but like for instance that, or also this idea of gossiping. I thought, well, doesn't everybody gossip? You know, I grew up that way. You know, I grew up with, you know, family chats. It was part of the culture. And then it's like, oh man, yeah, maybe it's not such a good thing, right? So it's that kind of internal reflection around something that you thought might have even not been that bad, but it's really about the energy, and it's about the vibration. We talked about Sanskrit, those words having power. Well, even in any language, words have power, right? We really have known that. So remember, if it's true, it's good and necessary, go ahead and speak, but otherwise try to avoid that behavior, and just try to also just before that become aware that we're even doing it, or in my case, that it was even wrong as a child, right? So express the truth as much as you possibly can, and then when you become aware of something that's a truth, well, then, you know, shift your perspective, be open-minded, that we're not always right about everything, and so that's why we keep learning, that's why we keep growing, so that our perspective and our open-mindedness leads us to bigger truths and wisdom. Let's move on to number 3, asteya. It kind of goes with satya, which is, of course, what's true, the truth. Well, this is around honesty. But I also, of course, the most obvious is, of course, don't steal, right? Don't steal, which is a big thing, because it could be obviously like, okay, well, don't steal money at a bank, but also don't steal at a small level, right? Don't take somebody's pen. Don't, you know, just be mindful of what you're taking. I reference the Buddhist principles here because they're very similar. When I went to a Vipassana silent retreat, it was the first time too that when it came time for the meal, right? First of all, they said, just notice if you're walking a little bit faster, if you're leaning in, if you're trying to like beat that person in line. This is just natural human behavior when we become, you know, hungry, and you know, that last meditation, you're really just thinking about, oh man, lunch is coming and I'm really hungry. And then your behavior, your physical starts to match that energy. And so I was chuckling because I thought that, you know, when somebody brought it up, like, oh, were you walking a little faster, like a little pep in your step, because you were going towards, you know, food and nourishment. But furthermore, there was always this like bar of, goodies, healthy snacks. And they're like, please, take part, like take, but also take just what's necessary. Like, you know, especially if you come from a world of lack, and some of you may understand this, some of you may not. Some cultures are naturally predisposed to live in that kind of lack mentality of there might be some today, but there might not be tomorrow. So let's hoard. Or maybe like, there wasn't enough growing up. So in your mind, there's always in the back of your head, like maybe, I should stockpile a little bit because there isn't enough. And that's a common psychological kind of self-defensive mechanism that gets built up depending on how you were raised or your socioeconomic circumstances. And so with regards to that open bar, there's always that like whole, oh man, I'm gonna like put a little more, I'm gonna take a couple, and all of that. So really when it talks about asteya, it's a big concept. It's not just stealing, it's also taking what's necessary, right? That's a concept that you can start to work on. Like even things like paper towels, toilet paper, these things that we use, throwaway cups, all of that, like I've started to become so much more mindful of that, right? Instead of just using like a stirrer that you use once and throw it away, that's asteya, is to be aware of the things that we're being, even though we can afford them, even though we have a surplus of things, especially in the West, we might live very, very, very comfortably. It's this idea that even though I have, and even though I have even a surplus, maybe I have that honesty that I'm only going to take what's necessary for me. And then coupled with this concept of honesty, and obviously not stealing and that, what about authenticity? I think that it also ties in here. With asteya, it's also about being authentic and honest about who you are. So much of this world is about the selfie and the life, on social media we're trying to portray with regards to our family, the type of parent you are, the type of spouse that you are. And we obviously know nobody has a perfect life. Nobody does. And if they look like they do, or they say they do, I'll say that's probably not true. Deep down, that's probably not true, or they're not even aware that it's true, because I've yet to find someone who has everything, all happiness, perfect, has healed it all, has no wounds, and lives beautifully. Like that's very, very, very hard to do in today's world. If you're married, if you have children, if you have a job, any of these things is going to just complicate your life in so many different ways. And so no one can be perfect, and no one is perfect, and nobody's asking any of that. But so being authentic to your experience, to who you are, who you're trying to be, this also talks to this concept of asteya, to be honest with yourself. And then kind of like that's what you're portraying out, that honesty from that place of authenticity. Number 4, brahmacharya. The word is containment. I'm sorry, not contentment, containment. But it has to do with your energy. I think this one's really important because I think we don't give this a whole lot of credit, but you certainly can feel it. What do I mean? I mean that we are constantly expending our energy. If you think about your energy like being in some sort of a container, okay, you only have so much of that energy in one day before you're depleted or exhausted. So I'm sure you've done something in your life where at the end of that day, you're just like, I need to shut down. I am exhausted. I am tired. For me, I've really noticed that when I engage a lot in a social activity, or I maybe teach a class in front of people or something like that, like I speak in front of a crowd, I feel exhausted afterwards. At the end, I need to take a nap. I need to shut down. The reason for that is because you're constantly either aware, being aware of it or not, depleting your energy by giving it out, or some folks actually take the energy. Okay, whether consciously or unconsciously, people just do that. Interactions, all kinds of interactions deplete your energy. Okay, you have to know what types of things give you energy and what types of things either suck it away or take it from you, or you willfully give it. Okay, that's why I said earlier that if you have, a family, a career, a spouse, a this, or that, there's only so many things that you can give your life force energy to before, it's like you're left with nothing. And, people will say, being a mother is one of the most challenging jobs and that you'll ever have. And I agree with that, because it's you're giving, you're giving, you're giving, you're giving, and you're giving of your energy. Now, of course, whoever is a mother on here can tell you it's also incredibly rewarding. So that's where you're getting energy. But everything that you do has an energetic cost. So when you're saying yes, 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 or you have a really high profile job where you're very public, or you engage a lot with clients or people or things, you're just very much out there, and there is that depletion of your energy. Now, this traditionally really had to do with specific to like intimate or sexual encounters. When people usually talk about brahmacharya, they really focus on that avenue. But I really think, of course, it is that, but any other interaction with anyone else can also deplete you. There's a great book. I don't have the author, but I can put it in a chat. But anyway, it's called Dodging Energy Vampires. There's many around that subject, but essentially it's this idea that some people drain the life out of you and some people give you energy. And you really can know that after you have an interaction with this individual for 10-15 minutes. Do you feel more energized, revitalized, whatever, or do you feel drained and tired? So really brahmacharya is around controlling that, and being aware that if you have any leaks, gaps, people who suck your energy. And especially, of course, I don't think I have to say to this group that if you share yourself with someone in a sexual manner, you are just really sharing a whole lot of your life force energy. So it definitely has to be very, very, very conscious that you're doing that, very aware. So that's kind of brahmacharya, to monitor your energy output and input, and know that when you put yourself out there on social media, so because again, if you're in this plant medicine world, there's this one consciousness and energy world out there. Even when you constantly put yourself out there, and you say, well, I don't really talk to people, but I'm just on social media, that's also draining too, because they're thinking about you, positive, negative, I don't know, but your energetic field is still kind of feeling that. Okay. The last one of the yamas is aparigraha, and this is non-attachment. I think that with ego deaths and all the work we do in plant medicine, this one is huge. How many of us have been told by the medicine, have been shown by the medicine how we are too attached to something or someone or all of the above, right? Plant medicine does a great job of showing you how, if you've experienced an ego death, you don't take anything with you. You don't take anything but the experience that you're having, the experience that you've had, and that's it, that's all. You don't take anything with you, not the clothes, not the jewelry, not even, your children, of course, your relationship. You don't take anything with you. So it does an incredible job of experientially showing you that it's your spirit, your life force energy, your higher self, and that's it. That's all. That's all that's there. That's all that you are continuing on in the next adventure, whatever that might be. So aparigraha very much talks about relationships, things, the accumulation of things, right? We live in a very blessed world that we live in, the part of the world that we live in, where we can have comforts and things and all of that. But aparigraha, that concept asks you of non-attachment to look at those things and to stop and think about, do I really need that extra blank, that next whatever, that next bigger, badder, more of. Also in relationships, right? Non-attachment doesn't just have to do with things, but relationships. Relationships, we can be that. I think that's the hardest one. I think we could probably get rid of all our stuff, but our relationships, ooh, that was a hard one, right? But plant medicines, I think, is an incredible way to work on your attachments, because it'll show you, it'll tell you where you are overly attached, what relationships aren't working, what things you're accumulating, what you are, favoring over another, and if you have an unhealthy relationship with any of that. So that's the 5 tenets of the yamas. The first on the Ashtanga Path, and it gives you a lot to think about with regards to yourself and your relationships, how you conduct yourself inward, how you actually conduct yourself with the exterior world. And it just has a lot of food for thought. You can take each one of these and really kind of journal about your views on nonviolence, both with yourself. Are you violent with yourself? With others, with your environment? What's true to you in satya? Do you adhere to truths? Do you engage in behaviors that you no longer like or feel are helpful to your growth? How about honesty? How honest are you with yourself, and how do you present yourself to the world? Is it accurate? Is it the same as what you feel on the inside as what you're showing on the outside? Brahmacharya, who are you sharing your energy with? Is it the people that you really want to, and are they giving you life force energy back, or are they just sucking from you? Is it an even exchange? Are there things where you are having leaks that you could pull back and unplug from those things? And non-attachment. Do you have what you need? And or do you have so much more? And how do you feel about that? Is it a healthy relationship? Or how do you feel about the things that you have and or the relationships? How are you with regards to power and control over your relationships? What are you attached to? Or would you like to be more connected? Because connection is a good thing. Attachment, dependence, those are different. Lots to consider, lots to look at inward. And this is the first of the root system, is to really have that good understanding and what you're working on. This is a whole lifetime worth of work. This isn't like I'm done, I'm there, I've achieved, I've arrived. It's I can always improve on any one of these. And then next class, we're going to talk about the Yamas. This is the how. How do we practice some of these things? How do we help support these tenets that we're trying to live by? How do we help support them? Well, I hope you have a lot to think about, a lot to journal, a lot to discuss. This is really the nuts and bolts of this material. And it's all in the practices, which will also be discussed in future classes. So thank you so much for showing up for yourself. And I love to see you back here for the next class. Namaste.